Hey, I want to share with you a very cool mixing technique that I use often when mixing live drums. Let's check it out. Hey, what's up, my friend? Chris Salim here from Mixdown Online. Now, before we jump in, I just want to let you know that I just launched the Mixdown Coaching Community. It is a brand new platform made for home studio musicians who wants to get mentorship, guidance, community, and resources to finish their songs and start releasing music with confidence. Doors for registration are open until this Saturday, which is tomorrow. So if you're watching this video later than tomorrow, you can get yourself on the waiting list and get a chance to get in when I, in the future, open the doors back to registration. So check it out. The link is down below. Now let's go in CUBASE and check what we have here. I'm going to have you listen to a drum mix without any reverb whatsoever. So it's going to be pretty much dry. Okay, so the idea behind this technique is to use drum samples instead of reverb. But I'm not going to say instead or to 100% replace a reverb, because there's a way you can actually blend both together and get very good results. And I'm going to show that to you in this video later on. But first, let's look at what we have as far as our drum samples goes. So I have these two channels, okay, which are stereo audio channels. And on the snare channel, because I'm using a snare channel and also a kick channel, because I'm going to use a sample, a room sample for the snare and also for the kick drum. So the one channel for the snare, I have an instance of a trigger, which is the plugin that I'm going to use to just to replace my drum sound. So straight on the channel itself, I have a snare recording, which is the regular snare recording that is part of my whole drum recording, and same for the kicks. Okay, so I have a copy of those recordings on those two channels. And now, if I go back to the plugin, I have a chance here with this plugin. The cool thing is that you can add and combine different, like up to 8 different samples together to create one, big sound if you want to. And what I'm using right now are samples from, it's a drum sample bank that I love to work with called That Sound. Okay, now this is not sponsored whatsoever. This is like, these samples are one of the sample banks, like as far as drum goes, that I use most of the time. So on the first channel here within the trigger, I have a, let me just solo my snare channel and listen to the first sample, which is a room sample, but it's a more close room sample compared to the second one. So let's listen to the first one. All right, let's listen to the second one. Okay, now we can hear that like the second one is way more large, so that was probably some microphones recording the live drums like further back within the room, so it captures more of the room sound than the drums themselves, which is perfect for what I'm going to do. So what I decided to do is to blend those two sounds together, and this is what I got. Okay, I'm going to unsolo these and just listen to how that sounds like with the drums. And again, this is only for the snare sound. Now, the cool thing about using a sample for a room sound, for a snare or a kick, is that I end up with a real drum room recording. And this is what I'm using to add into my mix, which is quite nice. And it sounds like there's that natural vibe to it, which is a very good thing. Now let's try that out on the kick drum. So I'm going to go back on the trigger and listen to what I have here. So again, I'm using this close room sound. And the second room sound, which were recorded further back in the room. Okay, and we can hear that, it's a pretty huge as far as the sound goes. So let's blend those two together with the kick drum. Now I'm overdoing it so we can hear it. Let's bypass both of them. And we're back to a dry sound. So that is actually cool. It sounds great. From this point, it's a matter of balancing that correctly together and of course within the context of the mix. So I'm going to bring out the instrumental of the song. So that works pretty well. But what I also like to do is to add real reverbs also, just to combine with those samples, okay? So let's do so. On this drum mix, I also have the big room channel and the drum room channel, which are basically room-type reverbs, where I send, I think part of what I'm sending into those two channels are the room mics and the overheads that I've recorded here in the studio. Now, my room is not a large room. I'm working and recording drums in a, small type room. So I'm very limited to the amount of room sound I'm going to get in my room. There's some recording tricks that I can use that I actually use sometimes also just to bring a bit more of a kind of a bigger room in my drum recordings, but I'm still limited to get that big, huge room drum sound in my small room. So that's why I always, like most of the time, I'm going to add some room reverbs straight on my room mics and also my overheads. And this is what it sounds like if I blend those with my samples. Okay, so these are only the drum sound, the drum mix with those room channels, okay, which are actual reverbs. If I blend my samples with these, pretty cool. On top of that, for this mix anyways, I decided to go with a smaller type of, like a shorter reverb time reverb, just add a bit more density around the snare drum. Nothing too complicated. I'm using just a stock plugin out of CUBASE, a regular reverb plugin, and the reverb time is pretty low, and I'm getting that, short reverb that surrounds the snare drum and just add a bit more fatness to the snare. And when I combine all those like reverbs and room samples together, I'm getting a cool result. So that's pretty cool. And from this point, it's a matter of balance in the context of the mix. I love working with room samples. It just gives me a more natural vibe when mixing drums. And when I blend this with a real reverb, like in this case around the snare drum, and some room verbs for my overheads and room mics, it just gives me way more flexibility within my drum mix, especially in the type of room I'm recording my drums. It gives me the chance to be a bit more creative when mixing drums. For example, I can use that snare reverb on choruses only, and having my drum sound only with the room samples for verses, or vice versa, or whatever I want to do. So this is the type of flexibility and creativity that I end up with when working with room drum samples and also reverbs for a drum sound. Now, if you want to try this out on your own, but you don't have a plugin like Trigger, there's a way you can do this in CUBASE, with only tools found in CUBASE. So stay tuned because I'm going to show that to you on my next video. So there you go, my friend. I hope that was helpful. I hope this is going to give you some cool ideas on your future mixes. So if you have any questions, comments, or even techniques you want to share, you can leave everything in the comment section down below. Until next time, take care, my friend, and see you.